Hey everybody, we are doing something a little bit different today, and it's something that we do at least once or twice a year, this Sabbath Sunday. We feel like it's really important to emphasize this, and really we're just going to talk about the Sabbath and what that means. And even for me, reading through the scriptures, you see evidence of the importance of this so often. And one of the things for me, even recently in the last couple of months, is reading through the Gospels and in Luke, seeing where Jesus is crucified, and Joseph then takes his body and puts his body in the tomb, and then these women, they prepare spices and perfume and all of that for his body. And there's this in Luke 23:56, it says, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment. And so in this moment, one of the most important moments in all of history, Jesus being crucified, they stop and they observe the Sabbath. They're obedient to the commandment. And for me, that was just, was like in the middle of all of this, they stopped. And that word Sabbath, it means to cease, to stop. And I think for us, this is something that we forget about. We go. And the only time for many of us that we stop and rest is when we're exhausted. And so Sabbath is somewhat foreign to so many of us. And I just wanted to ask you all, when it comes to Sabbath, and even growing up and over the years, is this something that you knew about growing up, and what was that like?
It was a church term for me. I mean, I knew Sabbath. I don't even know if I knew that it meant rest. But as far as my weekly avocations, or as far as like my routine in life, no. Even as an adult, and since I've been here at One Life the last few years, trying to it's not even wrapping my mind about it. It's about trying to actually do it. Our pace in our country is so fast, it's almost as if we don't have time to rest. And that's actually, unfortunately, become my posture of just going fast constantly. So,
What about for you?
Well, it was kind of seasonal too, based on soccer season. And so during soccer season, we were in Dallas playing soccer tournaments, and so not Sabbathing there. But then when it wasn't soccer season, we would rest on a Sunday, but it wasn't a conversation in my house about why we were resting. So there's no conversation of well, we're resting because we're going to delight in Jesus. Jesus rested, God rested, all of that. We just took a nap.
Right.
So, yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a church work for sure. But I think it was the opposite for me. I don't know that anyone told me rest was bad, but I think I felt it. To slow down meant just go to bed early the night before, so that you can get up early, so you can get back and get stuff done. And so I think that I was taught and trained that the Sabbath was Sunday, and it wasn't about how do I invest more of my energy, how do I get more to slow down. It was more just about this is just what you're supposed to do. And then I definitely felt guilty, and still feel guilty if I just take time for myself.
Yeah, for me, I think because I grew up going to church, and so that day was different than the others, but also the explanation of why and what this day is about, it just kind of never was there. And honestly, for me, even being on a church staff years ago, I mean, it wasn't anything to constantly go 7 days a week, and the whole rest thing wasn't emphasized. And so I think it's interesting going back in this to understand, going back to that scripture there in Luke, and they stopped and they observed the commandment. And so going back to the Ten Commandments. And so, you know, a lot of us who did grow up in the church, and even people who haven't, they hear the Ten Commandments, don't make any other gods before me, don't have idols, don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery, all these different things. But this one on Sabbath is in there, and it's actually has the most words around it than all the others. And so I just want to take a second and read it here in Exodus. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that's in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. And so, I don't know, like looking at that and how we live, and like Brian, you saying like with our pace of life and all of this, what really struck home with me is looking at these commandments, and we all read all these other ones and we say, oh yeah, it's like, Logan, I mean, you just killed someone yesterday. It's okay.
That's dramatic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't know. You don't know.
Body. Or thinking about, like cheating on your spouse. Hey, I know you did last month. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, Or Emily's got like a pickpocket problem. She steals
How does
stuff
she get
all
the
the
light
time.
I can see that.
She got the light one for
You don't know what all I steal.
But then,
For sure see that.
it's okay, it's okay these, and honestly looking at it from that way of saying like, oh, well, just keep the Sabbath, remember the Sabbath, it's holy, set it apart, don't do any work. But that's not what we say to people, we actually encourage people to do more, to go above and beyond, and not to just take this one day and say, no, this is set apart because I'm going to remember who I am, who God is, what he's done. And but in our culture, we can look at all those other ones and say, oh yeah, that's don't do that, but then this one we're like, I don't know.
It's interesting with you talking. I think what happens individually and more broadly is extremism.
Yeah.
So, and I worry about it because I have extreme personality, right? But broadly, in one sense, it's been flat out minimized.
Mhm.
Like I don't know that I've ever preached a sermon or taught a Bible study on Sabbath, on rest. I've had very, very, very few conversations with my family on Sabbath and resting. And that just happened in the last 3 years being here. That's a direct reflection of you. So it's minimized. For whatever reason, it's minimized. Or then the other extreme is to constantly just be, and I think you said this, a lazy bum and do nothing. And all you hear is rest, 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 rest. And I think both are equally sin, just on the opposite ends of the spectrum, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, and why, like, for me in particular, looking at this coming from a background of and confessed workaholism, it's hard, and when you see this, it's just so glaring of like, man, this is a challenge. And really, when you look at it, I think personally a lot of it has to do with control. And it goes back to even the creation account where in Genesis, the seventh day God had finished the work. In fact, it says in Genesis 2 and 3, it says by the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day, made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. And so the fact that God rested, like, who do we think we are? So God, who made everything, says, no, I'm stopping. No more creating, no more doing, no more producing. And then saying, like, that he blessed this day and he made it holy, that he set it apart. And there's something sacred about that day. It's not just a day off or a day to get caught up on stuff, which I feel like for many of us, that's about as far as we go when it comes to like work. You know, there's always more. And then, okay, so I stop work, but then at home there's more to do, and I've got to get caught up on all these different things, whether it's yard work, laundry, all of this stuff. And so that day off is the day to get caught up on all of this. And so it's not really set apart for God.
Yeah.
It's not set apart in remembering what he's done and who he is. But that whole thing of like, man, if God rested, why do we think that we don't follow that pattern? We don't need to.
It's interesting. So you had told us that we were gonna, talk about Sabbath and rest, and I had in my mind what that looks like for me and Sharon and my sons. What does it look like for me to practically? What does it look like for me to model resting Sabbath? And I was wrestling with it, trying to figure out what it would be, because even now, like, I don't do it. It's ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
It's a struggle. But since we've been reading, we're in the book of Psalms now, and I found myself praying through Psalms. And I went to 8th Street the other day, and I was probably there for an hour and a half, and I never got past Psalms 3. And just reading, and God would lead me on praying. It wasn't work, it was just spending time with the Lord. His word was reading me, and I was reading it, and just talking and listening to him. And the more I think about it, the more I think that's what my Sabbath is going to look like. I don't know, like, that's not for everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody looks different. But I think for me, and I'm sure a lot of people wonder practically, what does it look like? You look at scripture and there was arguments. I think that's where the Talmud came from. All right, don't do this, don't do that. They added 631 more laws where you can't pick up sticks. You can't walk this far. And not to get legalistic and crazy with it, but practically trying to figure out what does that look like. I think that's been part of the struggle. Not just being extremely busy, that's a large chunk of it. But the other is, okay, if you're not busy, what are you doing? Like, are you just sitting back watching TV? Well, then you're not making it holy and spending time with the Lord. So I go back and forth between doing that and driving. Because when I drive, I'm that slow guy on the road that's at peace and looking at nature and all of that. You just made me think about it. So easy. No judgment.
What for y'all though, when it comes to that, and I think this is, and one reason why we're doing this is we don't have this figured out.
No.
Like, we're not just nailing this, got it down every seventh day. We struggle in this, and so if we know, and we know the importance of this, and we struggle, then I feel like a lot of people will struggle. So like for you, for all of y'all, like, what are the things that make it hard? There may be obstacles or challenges in this or in this season of life too,
So like when I was thinking about Sabbath, I was going through all of my excuses of why I don't, and the Lord would just like whisper like, okay, but and so I was going through like, oh, I have this toddler. Well, like, one of my biggest responsibilities is to teach him and model for him, and I don't think there's a better way to show my love for Jesus than to spend time with Jesus with my son.
Mm-hmm.
And then my other one is like, oh, well, my house is dirty. I can't rest if my house is dirty. And so then just wondering so what does that make me believe about God? Like that he won't accept me in my mess, that he won't accept me when my house is this way. But then I was thinking through that of going well, I didn't have a problem with dishes in my sink while I watched TV last night. Yeah, and so it's it comes down to this choice of, do I trust God that he'll provide? Do I trust God that he'll accept me in this way? Do I trust God? And whatever your excuse is, what do I believe about him? But then also does that question even come into play when the sports game is on, or in my case when the Bachelorette is on, or whatever whatever it is. I can make a whole list of excuses of why it's difficult chasing a toddler around. I've got dishes to do, I've got to make a grocery run, but all of that is a choice. And at the end of the day, I don't want to choose a Walmart pickup order over the Lord.
Yeah.
If you break it down.
That's crazy what you just said about so what TV show, what's that trash?
It's The Bachelorette.
The Bachelorette, sports events. So think about it. The Rangers game, we all say that we're going, the entire week leading up to that, we're going to be excited about it, looking forward to it, preparing for it. How much more should we do the same for? I'm so convicted. I'm smiling right now. When you said that, it just hit me. Shouldn't we look forward to that and prepare for that in the same way?
I think my whole life has just been, you rest when you burn out. So I just burn out every few years, go off on a dark season, and then come back. And so I think that rest wasn't relevant. But I think the biggest hurdle I'm noticing trying to change this rhythm is, for sure, when you take that day and you say, I'm committed to the Lord, this is what my family's going to do, this is what it's going to look like. People don't like that. You have to say no to other people, and that's hard for me as a people pleaser. It's I'm not going to get this done this week, or I'm not going to go spend time with you, or we're no longer going to come to this event anymore because this is going to be a day that we're going to choose. And so I think that's been the hardest thing for me is saying yes to this, which is the most important thing. I lead my family in it. Means I'm going to say no to other people, and I hate it. It makes me feel initially it's taking some time to not feel like I'm not being a good friend or a good leader or a good pastor. And now it's how can you lead people if you're exhausted?
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely my biggest hurdle.
And to go off of that, I think that it would be my encouragement to other people too is this is all going to take time. If you've never Sabbathed before, it's going to be really hard for you to go read Psalms 3 for an hour and a half and keep being prompted to pray for different things. It's going to feel awkward to sit in your silence or with your Bible or in prayer for a long time.
It's different.
Yeah. And we talk about this in our student ministry a lot of going we want you to hear from God, but the first time you are listening, you might not hear anything.
Yeah.
Right.
But the more you do, and that would be the same thing with Sabbath, the more you do this, the more you would look forward to it.
Yeah.
The more it would be life-giving for our families and our little kids. And
Yeah, it's like going to church camp your whole life. You're told this is what quiet time looks like. They model quiet time for you. As you get older, everyone operates differently. Katie wants music playing. I just need to be alone. And so I think Sabbath is the same. I always quote you. I don't know if you actually said this or not, but if you work with your mind, you rest with your hands.
Yeah, I didn't say
you rest with your mind.
There's nothing.
I quote you every
original
time
from
for it.
me.
You said it to me.
There's nothing original from me, man.
Ronnie one time said that, but I think it's true. For me, there's seasons mowing the yard.
Yes.
Is rest for me because all I've done is think all week, and I don't have to think here. So I think it is worth it's a journey to learn what it looks like to rest in the Lord for you, because of how you're created.
And it is a process, and for me going down this journey, one of the things that really prompted it for me was the emotionally healthy spirituality, and understanding that this is a spiritual battle against powers and principalities that are unseen, that are trying to make us go faster, trying to make us think that the world revolves around us. And so even just the understanding of okay, Sabbath, I'm gonna stop. I mean, that's what it means, the word. So stop. I don't have to produce. I don't get to the end of that day and go I accomplished this,
Yeah.
this, and this, and that's hard. Physical rest, like for me, that's huge. So like just sleeping with no alarm clock. I wake up when I wake up. And I get kind of weird about this now too. Like I usually wake up when the sun comes up, so like I'll wear a sleeping mask because I just want it dark. I don't want to wake up.
Side note,
Love to see that.
extremely weird.
Man, I wake up.
You
Like
bougie?
if my body,
We digress.
If my body needs,
I want to see it.
Is it silk?
I don't know. It's off Amazon. I don't know. Then we lose them and have to get new ones. Anyway, there are so many times that I'll sleep, and honestly, like for me, usually Friday from about 1 o'clock, that's when it starts, 1 or 2 o'clock, and like my phone, like I won't answer my phone for 24 hours. Like I gotta get away from all of that technology, all of that. But there have been times like I'll go to bed on a Friday night and I will sleep 11 hours.
There's no way.
You know, because I've been, you know, my body needs it. But to go past that physical rest part into like actually enjoying God, and for me, and then that reflecting part, and I think this is the part that really brings us so much peace and really enables us to move forward into the next week, is that whole idea of like the garden and this relationship with God and perfection and being there. There's this rest being in His presence, but we live our lives at this in-between place where there's brokenness around us all the time. And so on that day, being able to stop and go like, whoa, from the beginning, and then I'm thinking about the garden and I'm thinking about heaven, and I'm in between. But I have hope because I know this. And so like that eternal rest, and it's life-giving. But to stop and reflect on that, it's huge.
So what would your like, if you can control the circumstances around your week, what would your perfect Sabbath look like?
Man, the thing that I struggle with right now, that I don't know what it would be perfect, but like the preparing for the Sabbath, and like Brian, you saying that, like, oh, we get everything together to go to the Ranger game, and like everything's prepared. What I find myself so many times is I haven't prepared for that day. So it's like, I mean, when you go back in the scriptures and you look, like, you'll see like the day of preparation for the Sabbath. So people were taking, like, they had their meals prepped, they had all that stuff done. So that
Conviction. Just even saying that, we meal prep for other reasons. Health, getting in shape, but not, this is,
but like laundry
I gotta get
or
it
anything.
done.
So anyway, I say all that, like for me, it really is like no technology, sleeping, some of that stuff that you talk about, like working with your hands, just because a lot of times in my normal everyday, it's more mental. And so there's things like that, being outside, and solitude's big for me. So like, I mean, when I get up, sit for an hour and a half, just sitting, read scripture, journal, but then, you know, after that, being with family. And this looks different for everybody,
For sure.
kids, different ages, all of that. And for me, being with family, some weeks I also like want to be with people because I've had a long time during the week and enough of that. Other times I don't want to be around anybody, and so it's really hard. I don't know that a perfect one has ever happened.
Yeah, no, it probably won't.
I think that's a good question though, because I guess as we talk about this, people want to know, well, where do I start? Like, what do I do? And the first thing is considering the implications on the relationship with God.
Yeah.
Being obedient to His word and recognizing, like, just setting aside this time to where you're reflecting, you're just spending time with the Lord, and then considering like what that physically or practically looks like in your life, because like you guys said, it's gonna look different. My mind is all over the place. I relax when I'm taking long baths. I relax and spend time with the Lord when I'm on a drive. And for me, it's no music. No music, no anything. Just driving.
Just dead silent.
Yep, that's it. I can get up at 1
That's your
o'clock
worst
in the morning.
nightmare.
Crazy.
I can get up, and naturally the Lord just made me that way. You know, what's interesting is my son, my oldest son, Kobe, is like that. He can just drive for hours. He just did that to Oklahoma City the other night. But inside joke. But that's just considering it, even taking time to think about what does this look like for me? For men, what does this look like? Husbands, what does this look like for my family? And then flat out, am I willing to be obedient to God? Maybe you start there and be honest about it.
For families, I think my encouragement would be to bring your kids in as much as possible. And so if you're making the preparations, like if you choose to do laundry on a different day, like bring your kids in, and their favorite question is why? Like, why are we doing laundry today? Why do I have to do it? Why can't we watch TV or something? And then just having those little conversations and moments while you're folding laundry, or while you're like doing the grocery shopping, or whatever it is, like just building up that I guess that work ethic and working for the Sabbath. And the more conversations they have, and like you're building in them as they're young and you're modeling it for them, hopefully whenever you launch them, they go and do this successfully too.
What for y'all would be one, we'll wrap this up, what would be one tangible thing that you could actually do to help you in this? Just
I think for Katie and I, like, just in our marriage, we make date nights a priority. And if we just like waited till the end of the week to have a date night, we never would. So I think for me, what we're trying to do is like sitting down and like planning a lot of it around the Sabbath. Like if this is when we're gonna have a Sabbath, if she's singing on Sunday, or if I'm teaching and Sunday's not gonna be a day, like how are we gonna make Saturday? How are we gonna prepare for it? I know we talked about that a lot, like the preparing for the days. Like that sounds crazy. Like getting chores done, that was the day that we got chores done. So if we're gonna plan everything around this, then it'll happen. If not, if we wait till Saturday or Sunday, we'll never have a Sabbath. So I think if it's not, it also changed my mind completely, realizing like it was very legalistic growing up, like the Sabbath sounding. I think realizing like not only is it about your relationship vertically with the Lord, but like it's a benefit to you, like to physically, spiritually, and emotionally rest. And so I think it's just got to be a priority.
You said one thing?
I mean, just whatever.
It's
Yes.
I cringe when you talk about electronics and phone down for 24 hours. I sleep with my phone within a foot of me on my nightstand. It's constant. This will be the biggest challenge for me. This will be the biggest challenge.
I just think like committing it to the Lord, and because if you're like, okay, Lord, I'm gonna do this, when you don't, He's gonna be reminding me, hey, remember when you said you're gonna do that? And I'm gonna start to feel that conviction. But then also just being like expectant of like what I'm gonna do, and thinking about like not only am I gonna do the laundry ahead of time, but also like kind of making a plan of I'm gonna sit for an hour and a half. I'm gonna read this passage of scripture. But then just like also just hoping that the Lord's gonna meet me in that, and I'm gonna learn something new, or He's gonna reveal something else about Himself, or just kind of that expectant thing. I think another super tangible thing, like outside of me, is telling Rachel I'm in a Sabbath so that she asks me what I did for my Sabbath.
Right.
And there's like an accountability there. And so bringing somebody else in, if it's your wife or if it's your friend or your kid's gonna want to get onto you big time if you say you're gonna do something and then you don't. But bringing in that accountability too, I think would be really helpful.
Oh, we just did it. Because everybody's going to watch this. And even if they don't ask us about Sabbathing, when we see them and someone says, man, I rested well last night, we're going to think, are they thinking, have we been resting? It just happened.
It just happened.
Thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome. It's good. Well, hey, I'm going to pray and God, thank you. Thank you for your word and your spirit. And you know right where we are in our struggles. And just remind us over and over and over that we are not you, and that you're the creator and we're the created, and we do find rest in you. And so continue to grow us in this and mature us in this, and I pray this, Jesus, in your name.